In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where ancient civilizations had risen and fallen for millions of years, where technology beyond imagination had been mastered and lost, where species had evolved to heights of power that defied comprehension, something impossible was about to happen. The greatest military minds of 1,000 worlds had calculated the odds. The most advanced artificial intelligences had run the simulations. The most powerful psychics had glimpsed the future. All reached the same terrifying conclusion. Total extinction was inevitable. The Devourers had returned, but in a small, forgotten corner of the galaxy, on a blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. A species that barely qualified as spacefaring had just received a message that would make them laugh in the face of impossibility. Because humans had something that no other species in the galaxy possessed. Something so dangerous, so unpredictable, so absolutely insane that it might just be the key to survival. They had nothing left to lose. And when humanity has nothing left to lose, the universe itself holds its breath. Admiral Sarah Chun stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table, her weathered hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The blue glow of Earth hung, suspended in the center, peaceful and serene, completely unaware that in 72 hours it would cease to exist. "Ma'am, the Galactic Council's final transmission is coming through," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced from his position at the communications console. His voice carried the weight of a man who had aged years in the past week. Sarah nodded grimly. Around the circular table, the Joint Chiefs of Earth's combined military forces sat in stunned silence. General Morrison of the Army, Admiral Wong of the Navy, General Jackson of the Air Force, and Marshal Santos of the newly formed Space Corps. Each of them commanded millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, and arsenals that could level continents. None of it mattered now. The hologram flickered and resolved into the image of Ambassador Veltar, a tall, elegant being whose species had ruled the stars when humans were still discovering fire. The Veltari were known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom, their advanced technology, and their unshakable composure, which made the fear in Veltar's 6 eyes all the more terrifying. "People of Earth," Veltar's voice carried the harmonics that marked a species' formal speech patterns, but underneath Sarah could hear something she had never expected from a Veltari: desperation. "I bring final words from the Galactic Council of United Worlds. In approximately 72 of your hours, the entity you know as the Devourers will reach this sector of the galaxy." Sarah felt her heart sink even further. She had hoped, against all logic, that somehow the Council had found a solution, a way to evacuate Earth's population, something, anything. "We have run every simulation, consulted every database, examined every possible outcome. The mathematical certainty is absolute. When the Devourers reach your world, all organic life will be consumed, as it has been on 47 other worlds in their path. We have been unable to slow their advance by even a single hour." The hologram of Veltar seemed to age before their eyes. The combined fleets of the Council, representing the military might of over 1,200 species, have engaged the Devourers 7 times. Each engagement resulted in total annihilation of our forces. Ships that took centuries to build, technologies that represented the pinnacle of galactic achievement, warriors trained for lifetimes, all consumed in moments. General Morrison leaned forward, his scarred face reflecting the blue glow of the transmission. "What about evacuation? Surely your ships can take at least some of our people." Veltar's expression conveyed regret in the subtle way of his people. "General Morrison, the scale of this catastrophe extends far beyond your world. The Devourers consume not just life, but the very space-time fabric itself. They leave behind regions of absolute void. No matter, no energy, no possibility of existence. We are evacuating our core worlds, retreating to the galactic rim. Every ship we possess is already overloaded with refugees from the 47 worlds that have fallen." The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of her daughter, safe in the colony ship that had left for Proxima Centauri just months before the crisis began. At least some humans would survive, even if Earth itself was doomed. However, Veltar continued, and something in his tone made Sarah's eyes snap open. There is one option we had not previously considered. It came to our attention through our deep scans of your military capabilities. Sarah exchanged glances with her fellow officers. Earth's military was impressive by human standards, but compared to galactic civilizations that had been perfecting warfare for millions of years, they were barely beyond stone tools. Your species possesses something unique in the galaxy: nuclear weapons. Not fusion weapons, not antimatter weapons, not even quantum destabilizers. Primitive fission and fusion devices that any civilized species abandoned eons ago. Veltar paused, and for the first time in the transmission, something that might have been hope flickered in his eyes. Admiral Chun, how many such weapons does your species currently possess? Sarah blinked in confusion. Well, the exact number is classified, but approximately 12,000 active warheads across all nations, with yields ranging from tactical kiloton devices up to strategic weapons in the 100 megaton range. But, Ambassador, with respect, our most powerful weapons would be less than pinpricks against something that destroyed your dreadnoughts. Under normal circumstances, yes. But the Devourers have one characteristic that we only recently discovered. They are composed of exotic matter held together by quantum field matrices. These matrices are extraordinarily sensitive to specific types of radiation. Radiation that occurs only in the crude nuclear reactions produced by your primitive weapons. The room erupted in confused voices, but Sarah held up a hand for silence, her mind racing. Are you saying our nuclear weapons could actually harm these things? More than harm them. A direct nuclear detonation within their mass matrix could theoretically cause a cascade failure, potentially destroying an entire Devourer node. The problem is delivery. Your weapons are designed for planetary warfare, not space combat. And the Devourer's defensive systems would annihilate any conventional delivery system long before it reached its target. Admiral Wong leaned forward. What kind of defensive systems are we talking about? Energy barriers that can stop antimatter bombardment. Gravitational lenses that can deflect asteroid-sized projectiles. Temporal distortion fields that age incoming attacks to dust before they arrive. Every form of advanced weaponry in the galactic arsenal has proven useless. Sarah's tactical mind began to turn. But they've never faced our kind of weapons before. Our delivery systems might be primitive enough to slip through their defenses. That is our hope. Admiral Chun, your species has one other advantage. You are unknown to them. The Devourers have existed for millions of years, consuming advanced civilizations. They have adapted to counter every form of sophisticated attack. But they have never encountered a species that still uses chemical rockets and metal projectiles. General Jackson spoke up, his weathered face thoughtful. Ma'am, if I may, we have been working on something. Project Deep Strike. Fusion-powered kinetic kill vehicles designed to penetrate planetary defenses. They're not pretty, but they're fast, and they're hard to stop. Sarah nodded. She knew about Deep Strike. Massive tungsten projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. Devastating against planetary targets, but surely useless against entities that had shrugged off the galaxy's most advanced weapons. The Council's scientists have run preliminary calculations, Veltar continued. If your nuclear weapons could be delivered directly into a Devourer's core matrix, the resulting cascade might not only destroy that individual entity, but potentially disrupt the quantum field linking the entire swarm. It is, we acknowledge, a desperate gamble with odds so remote as to be essentially impossible. What kind of odds? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. 0.001%. One chance in 100,000. And that assumes perfect execution, perfect timing, and perfect luck. The room fell silent again. One chance in 100,000. It was beyond desperate. It was insane. Marshal Santos, the youngest of the assembled officers, suddenly sat up straighter. Admiral, We do have one more asset. The Yamato. Sarah's breath caught. The Yamato was humanity's first and only prototype faster-than-light vessel, built using technology reverse-engineered from a crashed alien probe decades earlier. It was fast, nearly indestructible, and completely invisible to most forms of detection, but it could only carry a crew of 12 and had virtually no weapons beyond point defense systems. The Yamato could deliver a nuclear payload, Santos continued, his voice gaining strength. Her stealth systems are based on principles the aliens haven't seen before, quantum uncertainty manipulation. She might be able to approach undetected. Veltar's image flickered as he consulted with others off-screen. When he returned, his expression was grave. Admiral Chun, we must be absolutely clear about what we are asking. This mission would be suicide. The Devourer swarm consists of hundreds of individual entities, each the size of a moon. Even if the cascade theory works, even if you succeed in destroying one, the others will annihilate anything in the area. There would be no possibility of escape. Sarah stared at the hologram for a long moment, her mind racing through the implications. Humanity's first contact with alien civilization had been 3 months ago, when the Galactic Council's emergency broadcast had reached Earth. They had learned they were not alone in the universe on the same day. They learned the universe was about to end. Now, these vast intelligences that had ruled the stars since before Earth's continents had formed were turning to a species that had barely mastered nuclear fusion for salvation. It would have been laughable if it weren't so terrifying. Ambassador Veltar, Sarah said finally, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. You need to understand something about humans. When we're backed into a corner, when everything we love is threatened, when the odds are impossible, that's when we're most dangerous. She turned to face her fellow officers, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. We've never run from a fight we couldn't win. We've never surrendered when the enemy seemed unstoppable. And we're not going to start now. General Morrison nodded grimly. The Devourers have never faced humans before. They have no idea what they're dealing with. Admiral, Veltar's voice carried new undertones of something that might have been respect. If you're seriously considering this course of action, the Council is prepared to provide whatever assistance we can. Long-range sensor data, navigation coordinates, technical specifications of the Devourer entities. But I must emphasize, this is not just humanity's last hope. It is the galaxy's last hope. Sarah stood, her decision crystallizing with absolute clarity. Then, we'd better not screw it up. Lieutenant Rodriguez, give me a secure line to President Martinez. Tell her we need immediate authorization for Operation Final Dawn. Ma'am, Rodriguez asked, what should I tell her the mission parameters are? Sarah looked around the room at the faces of humanity's military leadership, then back at the holographic image of an alien ambassador who represented civilizations older than Earth itself, all of them placing their desperate faith in a species that had discovered fire only yesterday in galactic terms. Tell her we're going to save the galaxy, and that we're probably going to die trying. As the communications began flying across Earth's networks, as humanity's greatest scientists began working frantically to adapt their nuclear arsenal for space combat, as the crew of the Yamato prepared for a mission that would make them either the galaxy's saviors or its final martyrs, Admiral Sarah Chun allowed herself one last look at the blue marble hanging in the holographic display. In 72 hours, either Earth would still exist, or everything humanity had ever achieved would be nothing but cosmic dust. But the Devourers were about to learn something that no other species in their millions of years of existence had ever taught them. They were about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's home. And that lesson was going to hurt. Captain Marcus Webb floated in the zero gravity of the Yamato's command center, watching his crew perform final systems checks with the kind of calm professionalism that comes only from accepting that you're about to die. Around him, 11 of humanity's best and brightest worked at their stations, each one a volunteer who had stepped forward when they learned the mission parameters. They were 36 hours out from Earth now, racing through hyperspace toward a rendezvous with cosmic horror at velocities that would have been impossible just months earlier. The Galactic Council's data packets had taught humanity more about faster-than-light travel in 3 days than they had learned in the previous 50 years of theoretical physics. "Captain," called out Dr. Sarah Kim from her position at the science station, "I'm reading some unusual quantum fluctuations in the hyperspace matrix ahead of us. Could be natural phenomena, but it could also be our target." Webb finished. At 42, he was the youngest captain in the Space Corps, promoted to command the Yamato specifically because his psychological profile showed the right combination of tactical brilliance and utter fearlessness. The mission planners had been looking for someone crazy enough to fly directly into the maw of creatures that devoured worlds for lunch. They had found their man. Distance to emergence point, Webb asked his navigator, Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez. 18 minutes, sir. The Council's data suggests we should drop out of hyperspace approximately 1 light hour from the Devourer swarm, far enough to avoid immediate detection, close enough for our sensors to get accurate targeting data. Webb nodded, then activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. In less than 20 minutes, we're going to drop out of hyperspace and get our first look at the things that have the entire galaxy running scared. I want everyone to remember, we're not just representing Earth up here. We're representing every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Every child who ever dreamed of exploring space. Every scientist who ever pushed the boundaries of knowledge." He paused, looking around at his crew. Each face showed the same mix of terror and determination that he felt in his own chest. "The odds against us are 100,000 to 1. In the history of warfare, no military force has ever faced worse odds and survived. But then, again, no military force has ever been composed entirely of humans who were told something was impossible." A few grim smiles appeared around the command center. "Besides," Webb continued, allowing some dry humor into his voice, "the Devourers have spent millions of years consuming advanced civilizations. They're used to facing enemies who fight logically, who retreat when defeated, who surrender when the situation becomes hopeless. They've never met humans before. They have no idea how absolutely, catastrophically stubborn we can be." Chief Engineer Tom O'Brien looked up from his console with a grin that would have been appropriate on a pirate ship. "Captain, all weapons systems are green. The nuclear payload is armed and ready. The delivery system tests out perfectly. When we get close enough to these bastards, we're going to give them the biggest surprise in galactic history." The payload O'Brien was referring to was humanity's contribution to the galaxy's salvation, a modified fusion bomb with a yield of 200 megatons, wrapped in a delivery system that was part missile, part kamikaze drone, and part middle finger extended toward the universe itself. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't sophisticated, and by galactic standards, it was laughably primitive. It was also the only weapon in the galaxy that might actually work. "Emergence in 60 seconds, Vasquez announced. "All stations, prepare for real space transition." Webb gripped his command chair as the Yamato's experimental hyperdrive began its shutdown sequence. The sensation of dropping out of hyperspace was something no human had experienced more than a handful of times. Reality seemed to twist, colors that had no names flashed behind closed eyelids, and for just an instant, every atom in your body forgot which dimension it belonged to. Then they were back in normal space, and the main view screen activated to show them what nightmares looked like when they grew large enough to eat solar systems. The Devourer swarm hung in space like a cluster of dark tumors against the star field, each individual entity roughly the size of Earth's moon, but with a surface that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with a fluid, organic motion that made Webb's skin crawl, occasionally brushing against each other in ways that sent ripples of energy cascading across their surfaces. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Park from her position at the tactical console. "There are so many of them." Webb counted quickly. At least 300 individual Devourers, arranged in a loose formation that stretched across several million kilometers of space. Each one was surrounded by a faint shimmer that he knew from the Council's data represented energy fields capable of stopping antimatter bombardment. Sir, Dr. Kim called out, her voice tight with scientific excitement despite their circumstances. I'm getting readings I've never seen before. These things aren't just absorbing matter and energy, they're actually consuming space-time itself. The quantum vacuum around them is being systematically destroyed. Any sign they've detected us? Webb asked. Negative, Captain. Our quantum uncertainty field is holding steady. As far as their sensors are concerned, we don't exist. Chief O'Brien's voice carried professional pride, mixed with barely controlled terror. The stealth system is working exactly as designed. Webb studied the tactical display, his mind automatically calculating attack vectors and probability matrices. The Yamato was fast, maneuverable, and invisible, but she was still just one small ship against hundreds of world-killing entities. Even if their nuclear weapon worked perfectly, destroying one devourer might not be enough to trigger the cascade effect the Council scientists had theorized about. Dr. Kim, can you identify which one might be the primary node? The Council's data suggested there should be some kind of command entity. Kim bent over her instruments, her fingers dancing across alien controls that humanity had barely begun to understand. I'm seeing some unusual energy patterns from a cluster near the center of the formation. 3 entities that seem to be communicating? The quantum resonance between them is off the charts. That's our target, Webb decided. If we can get close enough to plant our package right in the middle of that command cluster, the cascade effect should propagate through their communication network. Captain, Vasquez said quietly, that puts us right in the heart of the swarm. Even with our stealth systems, the chances of getting out alive are 0. Webb finished for her. The chances of getting out alive are 0. That's not what we're here for, Elena. We're here to make sure these things never reach Earth. Whether we survive is entirely beside the point. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the quiet beeping of instruments. Through the view screen, the Devourers continued their slow, inexorable advance toward Earth, consuming the very fabric of reality as they moved. Webb activated the tactical display and began plotting their approach vector. The plan was simple in concept, insanely dangerous in execution. The Yamato would accelerate toward the command cluster at maximum velocity, using her superior speed and stealth to avoid detection until the last possible moment. When they reached optimal range, they would launch their nuclear payload directly into the center of the 3 command entities, hoping that the resulting detonation would trigger a cascade failure throughout the entire swarm. All stations, prepare for attack run. Navigation, plot a course that takes us through the outer edge of the swarm, then curves inward toward the command cluster. Engineering, I want maximum power to engines and stealth systems. Tactical, arm all weapons systems. We're not going to have time for a second shot. As his crew bent to their tasks, Webb allowed himself one last moment to think about Earth, about the 8 billion people who were depending on 12 humans in a prototype spacecraft to save them from cosmic annihilation. The weight of responsibility should have been crushing, but instead he felt a strange kind of peace. This was what humans were born for, taking impossible odds and spitting in their face. Course laid in, Captain, Vasquez reported. We'll reach the outer edge of the swarm in 14 minutes. Weapons armed and ready, Park announced. Nuclear payload is primed for launch on your command. Stealth systems at maximum efficiency, O'Brien added. We're about as invisible as it's possible to be. Webb nodded, then opened a secure communication channel to Earth. It would take the signal over an hour to reach home, but he wanted to send one final message before they entered the swarm. Earth Control, this is Yamato Actual. We have visual contact with the Devourer swarm. Beginning attack run in 13 minutes. Tell everyone back home that we're going to give these things something to remember us by. Yamato out. He closed the channel and looked around at his crew one more time. 11 of the finest people humanity had ever produced, about to sacrifice their lives for a species that had only learned it wasn't alone in the universe 3 months ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Webb said formally, It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you. In 12 minutes, we're going to show these cosmic horrors what humans are made of. Dr. Kim looked up from her console with a grin that was equal parts terror and determination. Captain, I've been thinking about the cascade theory. If it works, if we actually manage to trigger a quantum field collapse, the explosion is going to be visible from here to the galactic core. Good, Webb replied, settling back in his command chair. Let's make sure it's bright enough that everyone in the galaxy knows humanity was here. The Yamato surged forward, her fusion engines pushing her toward the Devourer swarm at a significant fraction of light speed. Behind them, Earth continued its orbit around a yellow sun, unaware that its fate now rested in the hands of 12 humans who had volunteered to become the galaxy's last hope. Webb watched the tactical display as they approached the outer edge of the swarm, counting down the seconds until they would either save everything they had ever known or die in the attempt. Either way, the Devourers were about to learn that humans didn't go quietly into the dark. They went down fighting, and they took as many enemies with them as possible. The countdown reached 0, and the Yamato entered the swarm. The Yamato slipped through the outer edge of the Devourer swarm like a ghost through a graveyard, her quantum uncertainty fields bending reality around her hull in ways that made her effectively invisible to the cosmic horrors that surrounded them. Captain Webb watched the tactical display with the focused intensity of a man who knew that a single mistake would result in the extinction of everything he had ever cared about. Distance to first Devourer, 200 kilometers, and closing, Lieutenant Commander Vasquez whispered, as if speaking too loudly might somehow give away their position. Through the view screen, Webb could see the nearest entity in horrifying detail. Its surface wasn't solid in any conventional sense. Instead, it appeared to be composed of writhing darkness that consumed light itself, punctuated by veins of energy that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. As they watched, a small asteroid drifted too close to the creature's influence and simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but erased from reality as if it had never been. "Sir," Dr. Kim called softly from her science station, "I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations from all the entities. They're not just communicating, they're sharing some kind of collective consciousness. Each individual devourer is like a neuron in a vast brain." Webb absorbed this information with the cold calculation of a career military officer. If the devourers operated as a hive mind, then destroying the command cluster might have even more devastating effects than the council scientists had predicted. Tactical analysis, Dr. Kim. If we disrupt their collective consciousness, what happens to the individual entities? Kim's fingers flew over her instruments as she ran rapid calculations. Theoretical scenario. If the quantum field network collapses, each devourer might lose the ability to maintain its exotic matter matrix. Without the collective consciousness to coordinate their existence, they could quite literally fall apart at the subatomic level. Could or would? Webb pressed. Based on the energy readings I'm seeing, I'd say the probability approaches certainty. Captain, these things aren't just linked. They're dependent on each other for basic existence. Remove the network, and the individual nodes become impossible to maintain. Webb allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Humanity's nuclear weapon might be primitive by galactic standards, but if it could sever the connections between the devourers, it would be the most effective weapon ever deployed in the galaxy's history. Contact bearing 187 Mark IV, Lieutenant Park announced from Tactical. Large entity, approximately 800 kilometers in diameter. Energy signature suggests this is one of the command variants. Webb studied the tactical display. They were now deep within the swarm, surrounded by hundreds of world-killing entities that moved with the fluid grace of cosmic predators. The Yamato's stealth systems were holding, but he could see stress fractures beginning to appear in the quantum uncertainty field. They wouldn't remain invisible forever. Dr. Kim, how long until our stealth systems fail? At current efficiency degradation rates, approximately 14 minutes before we become detectable to their sensors. Webb nodded grimly. They were still 30 minutes away from the command cluster at their current speed, which meant they would have to run the final approach without stealth protection. It would be a race between their speed and the Devourer's reaction time. All stations, prepare for combat acceleration. We're going to have to make the final approach at maximum velocity with no stealth cover. Chief Engineer O'Brien looked up from his console with the expression of a man who had just been asked to perform miracles with insufficient time and resources. Captain, if we push the engines past safety limits, we can increase our speed by approximately 30%. The fusion reactors will redline, and we'll be running on borrowed time, but we can do it. Do it, Webb ordered without hesitation. How long until we reach optimal firing position? At maximum acceleration, 17 minutes. But, sir, at those speeds, even with our inertial compensators, the G-forces are going to be brutal. Better than being vaporized by cosmic horrors, Webb replied. All hands, strap in. We're about to find out what this ship can really do. The Yamato's fusion engines roared to life with unprecedented fury, pushing the experimental spacecraft far beyond its design parameters. Webb felt the acceleration crush him into his command chair despite the inertial compensator's best efforts. And around the bridge his crew gritted their teeth and endured forces that would have killed an unprotected human instantly. Through the view screen, the Devourer swarm began to blur past them as they accelerated toward the command cluster. The entities seemed to sense something was wrong. Their movements became more agitated, and energy discharges began crackling between them like cosmic lightning. Sir, Park called out through gritted teeth, I'm reading massive energy buildup from multiple entities. I think they're preparing some kind of area effect weapon. Webb could see it too. The space around them was beginning to shimmer with malevolent energy as the Devourers prepared to sterilize their entire region of space. Whatever they had detected, they were taking no chances. Time to firing position. 11 minutes, 30 seconds, Vasquez gasped, fighting against the crushing acceleration. Webb's tactical mind raced through their options. They were trapped in the middle of the swarm with their stealth failing, surrounded by entities that could unmake reality itself, racing toward a target that might annihilate them before they could complete their mission. By any rational analysis, the situation was hopeless, which made it exactly the kind of situation where humans excelled. Chief O'Brien, can you give me more speed? Captain, we're already at 115% of maximum rated output. If I push the reactors any harder, we risk total containment failure. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Do it. The engineer's hands moved over his controls with the precision of a master craftsman, coaxing every possible erg of energy from the Yamato's overstressed systems. The acceleration increased again, and Webb felt his vision begin to tunnel as the G-forces approached the limits of human endurance. Contact! Park shouted over the roar of overstressed engines. 3 large entities dead ahead. Energy signatures matched the command cluster profile. Distance, 800,000 kilometers, and closing. Webb could see them now through the view screen. 3 massive Devourers arranged in a perfect triangle, each one easily the size of Earth's moon, connected by streams of energy that pulsed with alien intelligence. The space between them writhed with quantum distortions that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Kim confirmed target acquisition. Are those the command nodes? Kim fought against the crushing acceleration to check her instruments. Confirmed, Captain. The quantum resonance patterns indicate these 3 entities are the primary control nexus for the entire swarm. If we can disrupt them, the cascade effect should propagate through the entire collective. Tactical, prepare for weapon launch. I want our nuclear payload delivered right into the center of that triangle. Park's hands moved over her controls with practiced efficiency despite the brutal G-forces. Weapon armed and ready, Captain. Targeting solution locked. We'll have optimal firing position in 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Through the view screen, Webb could see the command cluster growing larger by the second. The 3 entities were massive beyond comprehension, their surfaces crawling with patterns of light and shadow that suggested intelligence vast and alien. As the Yamato approached, energy began building between them, forming geometric patterns that defied human understanding. "Sir," Kim called out, her voice tight with scientific fascination and existential terror, "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions from the command cluster. They're manipulating space-time itself. If they complete whatever they're building, I don't think anything in this solar system will survive." Webb watched the energy patterns forming between the three command entities, recognizing the signs of a weapon being charged to full power. The Devourers weren't just going to destroy the Yamato. They were preparing to annihilate everything within several light years. "Time to firing position." 2 minutes, 40 seconds, Vasquez announced. The space around the command cluster was beginning to twist in ways that made no geometric sense. Reality itself was being warped into new configurations as the Devourers prepared to unleash forces that existed only in the deepest mathematical abstractions of theoretical physics. "Captain," O'Brien called from engineering, "reactor containment is beginning to fluctuate. The stress on our systems is approaching critical levels. I don't know how much longer we can maintain this acceleration." Webb made a decision that would either save the galaxy or doom it to eternal darkness. "All power to engines. Shut down life support, shut down artificial gravity, shut down everything except propulsion and weapons systems." "Sir, without life support," Kim began. "We only need to survive for the next 3 minutes," Webb interrupted. "After that, it won't matter." The Yamato's already incredible acceleration increased yet again as every available erg of power was channeled into her fusion engines. The crushing G-forces would have killed the crew instantly if not for their acceleration couches and emergency oxygen systems, but Webb could feel his body being pushed to the absolute limits of human endurance. "Firing position in 60 seconds, Park announced, her voice barely audible over the stress alarms that were now screaming throughout the ship. The command cluster filled the view screen now. 3 alien monstrosities, each the size of a world, connected by energy streams that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. The geometric patterns they were creating in space-time had reached critical complexity, and Webb could see tears beginning to appear in the fabric of reality itself. 30 seconds to firing position, Vasquez called out. Webb gripped his command chair and prepared to give the order that would either save everything he had ever known or consign the galaxy to eternal darkness. Around him, his crew fought against crushing acceleration and failing life support systems, each one prepared to die to complete their mission. 15 seconds, Park announced. "Weapon locked on target. Ready to fire on your command, Captain." Webb watched the tactical display count down the final seconds. Through the view screen, the 3 command entities loomed like cosmic nightmares, their alien intelligence focused entirely on completing the weapon that would sterilize everything within a dozen light years. "Fire," Webb ordered. The nuclear weapon launched from the Yamato's hull, like humanity's final prayer, its primitive fusion drive pushing it toward the center of the command cluster at a significant fraction of light speed. It was a crude device by galactic standards, barely more sophisticated than the first nuclear weapons humanity had developed centuries earlier. But it was heading directly toward entities that had never encountered such primitive, brutal simplicity in millions of years of consuming advanced civilizations. Webb watched the weapon's progress on the tactical display as it streaked toward the command cluster, carrying with it the hopes of every human who had ever lived, every dream of exploration and discovery, every moment of love and loss that made life worth living. The Devourers detected the incoming projectile and began attempting to intercept it with energy beams that could have vaporized battleships. But the nuclear weapon was small, fast, and protected by the kind of crude shielding that their sophisticated defense systems had never been designed to counter. "Impact in 5 seconds, Park announced. Webb held his breath as humanity's desperate gamble hurtled toward its target, carrying the fate of the galaxy in its primitive fusion core. 3 seconds. The command entities were focusing all their attention on the approaching weapon now, pouring incredible energies into defensive measures that should have been more than sufficient to stop any conceivable attack. 1 second. Webb closed his eyes and whispered a prayer to whatever forces might be listening in the cosmic dark. Impact. The nuclear weapon detonated at the exact center of the command cluster, its 200 megaton yield seeming pathetically small against the cosmic scale of the entities it was attacking. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, reality came apart at the seams. The cascade failure began as a whisper in the quantum foam and became a roar that shook the foundations of reality itself. Captain Webb watched through the Yamato's view screen as the nuclear detonation's primitive fusion reaction interacted with the exotic matter matrix of the command entities in ways that no one, not the Galactic Council's greatest scientists, not the Devourers themselves, not even humanity's most optimistic theorists, had dared to hope for. The explosion didn't just destroy the three command entities. It unmade them, unraveling their existence at the quantum level and sending cascading waves of destruction through the network that connected every devourer in the swarm. "Holy Mother of God," whispered Dar, Kim from her science station, her instruments barely able to process what they were recording. "Captain, the quantum field collapse is propagating faster than light speed. It's not just affecting the command cluster. It's racing through the entire collective consciousness like a virus." Webb could see it happening through the tactical display. One by one, the devourer entities began to convulse as their exotic matter matrices destabilized. The creatures that had consumed 47 worlds, that had driven the galaxy's greatest civilizations to the edge of extinction, that had seemed utterly unstoppable just moments before, were now thrashing in cosmic agony as their very existence came apart. "The network is collapsing," Kim continued, her voice filled with scientific wonder and barely controlled hysteria. "Without the collective consciousness to maintain their quantum coherence, the individual entities can't sustain their exotic matter composition. They're literally dissolving back into base energy." Through the view screen, Webb watched as the nearest devourer began to come apart. Its surface, which had absorbed all light like a cosmic cancer, suddenly blazed with the fury of a dying star as the exotic matter that composed it reverted to normal energy states. The creature's death scream was transmitted not through sound, but through gravitational waves that made the Yamato's hull ring like a struck bell. "Captain," Chief Engineer O'Brien called from his station, "our reactor containment is failing. We've pushed the systems way beyond their limits. I'm reading cascade failures throughout the ship." Webb nodded grimly. They had accomplished their mission, but the Yamato was dying around them. The stress of their desperate acceleration, combined with the massive gravitational distortions created by the collapsing devourers, was tearing the ship apart at the molecular level. "How long do we have?" Webb asked. "At current degradation rates, maybe 10 minutes before total structural failure." Webb activated the ship-wide communication system one final time. "All hands, this is the captain. We did it. The cascade failure is propagating through the entire swarm. The devourers are being destroyed by their own quantum field collapse. Earth is safe. The galaxy is safe." He paused, looking around at his crew. 11 human beings who had volunteered to sacrifice everything for a species they had met only months before, who had taken impossible odds and turned them into victory through sheer bloody-minded determination. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you. When the history of this day is written, when children on 1,000 worlds learn about the moment the galaxy was saved, they will remember that it was humans who stood between civilization and oblivion. They will remember that when everything seemed lost, 12 people from a small blue planet decided that giving up was not an option." Through the view screen, the destruction of the Devourer swarm continued with awesome fury. Entities that had existed for millions of years were being reduced to fundamental particles in a chain reaction that would be visible from the galactic core. The space around them blazed with the fury of hundreds of artificial stars as exotic matter reverted to normal energy states. "Sir," Lieutenant Park called from tactical, "I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions from the destruction zone. The collapse of so many massive entities is creating, I'm not sure what to call it, a gravitational tsunami." Webb studied the tactical display. The death of the Devourer swarm was releasing energy on a scale that defied comprehension. Waves of twisted space-time were radiating outward from each dying entity, and where these waves intersected, reality itself was being stretched and compressed in ways that made no geometric sense. Dr. Kim, analysis? Kim fought against the ship's increasingly erratic motion to check her instruments. "The gravitational effects are enormous, Captain, but they're also localized. The destruction is spectacular, but it won't affect any inhabited systems. We're at the epicenter of the largest energy release in recorded galactic history, but Earth is perfectly safe." Webb felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he was carrying. Not only had they stopped the Devourers, but they had done so without causing collateral damage to the civilization they were trying to save. "Captain," Vasquez called from navigation, "I'm receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. Audio only. Their long-range communications are being disrupted by the gravitational distortions." "Put it through." Ambassador Veltar's voice crackled through the comm system, distorted by cosmic interference, but unmistakably filled with emotions that the usually stoic Veltari rarely displayed. "Captain Webb, this is Ambassador Veltar speaking for the Galactic Council of United Worlds. Our long-range sensors are showing impossible readings from your sector. Please confirm your status and mission outcome." Webb smiled despite their circumstances. "Ambassador Veltar, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the Earth vessel Yamato. Mission accomplished. The Devourer swarm has been eliminated through cascade quantum field collapse. The galaxy is safe." The silence that followed lasted so long that Webb wondered if the communication had been cut off. When Veltar finally spoke again, his voice carried undertones of awe that crossed species barriers. "Captain Webb, our sensors are detecting energy releases equivalent to the birth of stars. Are you confirming that your primitive nuclear weapon succeeded in destroying entities that our most advanced technologies could not even slow?" "Confirmed, Ambassador. Turns out that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions. The Devourers had adapted to counter every form of sophisticated attack in the galaxy, but they had no defense against good, old-fashioned nuclear fire." Webb could hear other voices in the background of the transmission, representatives of dozens of species all trying to process what they were witnessing. When Veltar spoke again, his formal diplomatic composure had completely cracked. "Captain Webb, you must understand, what you have accomplished today is beyond miraculous. The Devourers represented an extinction-level threat to all organic life in the galaxy. Civilizations that have existed for millions of years were preparing for total annihilation, and 12 humans in a single ship have ended that threat in a matter of minutes. With respect, Ambassador, we had help. The Council provided us with intelligence and targeting data. Without your cooperation, this mission would have been impossible." "Captain," Veltar's voice was now heavy with something that might have been reverence. "What your species accomplished today will be remembered for as long as intelligent life exists in this galaxy. The name human will be spoken with honor on 10,000 worlds." Webb felt his chest tighten with pride and grief in equal measure. They had saved the galaxy, but at the cost of their own lives. The Yamato was breaking apart around them, and there would be no rescue, no triumphant return to Earth. "Sir," O'Brien called from engineering, "reactor containment is at critical levels. I'm initiating emergency shutdown procedures, but it might not be enough. If the fusion reactors go critical, the explosion will be significant." Webb nodded. Even in death, the Yamato might contribute one final firework to the cosmic light show surrounding them. "All hands, prepare for emergency reactor shutdown. If the containment fails, well, at least we'll go out with appropriate style." Through the view screen, The last of the Devourer entities was coming apart in a blaze of liberated energy. The cosmic horror that had driven the galaxy to despair was ending not with the silence of consumed worlds, but with the fury of a species that refused to surrender. "Captain," Kim called from her science station, "I'm detecting something unusual in the gravitational distortions. The intersecting wave patterns are creating some kind of stable space-time tunnel. It's almost like a naturally occurring wormhole." Webb studied the tactical display. Kim was right. The chaotic gravitational effects of the dying Devourers were creating a tunnel through space-time that led somewhere. "Where does it go, Doctor?" "From the gravitational signature. I'd say it terminates somewhere in the Sol system. The energy patterns are consistent with Earth's gravitational well." Webb felt his heart skip a beat. A wormhole leading back to Earth, created by the death throes of the entities they had just destroyed. It was impossible, miraculous, and exactly the kind of cosmic coincidence that seemed to follow humans wherever they went. "Navigation. Can we reach the wormhole entrance before the ship breaks apart?" Vasquez ran rapid calculations on her failing instruments. "It's going to be close, Captain. The tunnel is approximately 200,000 kilometers away, and it's stable for maybe 3 more minutes. With our engines at current efficiency and structural integrity at 15%, it's possible." Webb made the decision without hesitation. "All remaining power to engines. We're going home." The Yamato turned toward the impossible tunnel through space-time, her fusion engines roaring one final time as she raced toward salvation. Around them, the last echoes of the Devourer swarm faded into cosmic background radiation, leaving behind only the memory of the species that had almost ended everything. As they approached the wormhole entrance, Webb opened one final communication to the Galactic Council. "Ambassador Veltar, this is Captain Webb. We're attempting to return to Earth via a naturally occurring wormhole created by the gravitational distortions. If we survive the transit, we'll be happy to provide detailed debriefings on our tactics and technology." "Captain Webb," Veltar's voice carried notes of hope and wonder. "The entire galaxy owes you and your crew a debt that can never be repaid. Whatever you need, whatever resources we can provide, you have only to ask." Webb smiled as the Yamato plunged into the wormhole, reality twisting around them in ways that made the hyperspace transition seem gentle by comparison. "Ambassador, all we ever wanted was to keep our homes safe. Mission accomplished." The wormhole collapsed behind them as they emerged into the familiar space around Earth. The Yamato's hull glowing cherry red from structural stress, but still intact. Through the view screen, Webb could see the blue marble that had always been humanity's most precious possession, peaceful and beautiful, and completely unaware that it had just been saved by 12 of its children. "Earth Control, this is Yamato actual requesting emergency landing clearance. We have wounded aboard and significant structural damage, but mission successful. The galaxy is safe." As Earth's defense platforms and rescue ships raced toward them, as news of their impossible victory spread across the planet's communication networks, as humanity began to grasp that they had just become the galaxy's saviors rather than its newest victims, Captain Marcus Webb allowed himself to finally relax. They had faced impossible odds, and won through sheer human stubbornness. They had taken the galaxy's most primitive weapons and turned them into salvation itself. They had proven that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem was the simplest one. The galaxy had been doomed. Then, humanity's armada of one ship had changed everything. And somewhere in the cosmic dark, the last echoes of the Devourer swarm faded into silence, leaving behind a galaxy that would remember, for as long as stars burned in the void, the day that 12 humans decided the universe was worth saving.